Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. K. John, Assistant Professor of Library Information Science. In this module, we will discuss methods and techniques of use studies part 2 that comes under library user and use studies. We have discussed conventional methods of use studies in our previous module, and in this module we are going to discuss some unconventional methods of use studies. The process of use studies by which we can conduct use studies. I am sure that this presentation will improve your understanding towards methods and techniques of use studies. This module developed to fulfill some objectives. These objectives are to understand unconventional methods of teaching of use studies. These methods are unconventional methods and not being used in general. All has specific methods and can be used in as and when required. These modules will increase your understanding towards these unconventional methods. To know how to conduct use studies, to know the various steps involved in conducting use studies, to know how these steps can be performed and a use study can be concluded objectively, to understand unconventional methods of teaching of use studies. These methods are unconventional methods and not being used in general. All has specific methods and can be used in as and when required. These modules will increase your understanding towards these unconventional methods. To know how to conduct use studies, to know the various steps involved in conducting use studies, to know how these steps can be performed and a use study can be concluded objectively. Functional analysis. Functional analysis is commonly used to better understand user behavior. This can be used in effective role allocation and performance. Every library has to play a role, that is role of service facilitator, and has to perform according to their role. This is a decision making approach which is broken down into its components to understand users behavior. In a library it can be done such as circulation, reference, information service, documentation service, and so on. Functional analysis can be performed on a group of users to know the status of new service or the service is being provided by the library. It can be performed in two ways. First, informed consent. Second, this can be performed uninformed consent. If users are informed, then they should know about characteristics of library service, users group, the purpose of the study, and the process of the service. Functional analysis focuses on two main aspects. First is target group or user, and the second aspect is purpose. This kind of method can be used in library in several ways because the library performing several functions for user satisfaction and performance of this service can be examined by this method. Functional analysis method is made to understand the user's behavior. Empathy modeling. Empathy stands for the deep emotional understanding of another's feeling about any problem or situation. And empathic modeling can also be applied in user study. In this type of user study, research scholar has to put himself in the position of the user at one point and observe or examine or understand difficulties faced by the while using the different library services. It is better way to judge the problems of the users instead judge through some artificial mean. It is very useful to understand the problem being faced by the users while using the services of the library. As an example, if you want to gain an insight into what it is like to be blind, you have to walk around with a blindfold. And if you want to understand what is like to drive a wheelchair, you drive on yourself. This method is useful but problematic since you will lack the experiences and strategies a real user has and can at any time choose to stop the exercise. Your experience is bound to be different from that the user that live with the real problem. It is almost clear that while designing a library building, stacking area and stairs and different section of the library is done without consulting the user's view. But after completing this, user's opinion can be understood by this model. Library services can be given properly and smoothly. Scenario based design is a very practical kind of method. In this, the library administration has to create a story on a task basis. Suppose a library want to judge how user searches his information. For that, a story has to be built involving tasks to be performed, like first inspect catalog, inspect through computerized catalog, search book or periodical, online information, and find they have satisfied or not. If yes, task is over, and if not, then again go through the whole process. The scenario based design has a simple procedure. First, write a small scenario. You can follow these steps. Write a 3-step scenario for one of you main persona when you explain the situation that motivates the needs for a particular function, how they access that function, service or process, the satisfaction they have from using that specific function. Sketch a 3-panel storyboard illustrating one of your scenarios. Remember to elaborate on specific interaction styles involving sound, gestures, and touch. Scenarios allow easy investigation of a wide range of future design. With scenario, you can work with ideas and concepts within the design team, and they also allow you to gather valuable feedback. Working on scenarios should consult a improve understanding and design concepts which can serve as a basis for the continued work. Now we will discuss about the cognitive walkthrough method. The cognitive walkthrough method is used to identify usability issues in any interactive system, and it is also applicable in libraries. It has been observed that sometimes users tend to learn or handle on their own rather than reading manual instruction given by the libraries. The cognitive walkthrough is a very useful method to conduct user study, and this is useful when it is applied with first time users and what kind of problem he or she encounters while completing task or understanding the task. This cognitive walkthrough method is developed in structured way, means every step is predefined because school library designer has to examine the task while walking through the question themselves. The following questions: will the user know how to carry out the task? Will the user notice the elements to use? Will the user understand the information on the interface? Will the user receive feedback after every action? This method can be applied for new library and for any new service which is going to be initiated by the library. Heuristic evaluation. Heuristic evaluation is a kind of informal method which was developed by Nielsen and Molick in 1990. This method can be applied where we want to examine or recognize the possibilities of failure or success according to the user's point of view with respect to their purposes. Heuristic evaluation is simply looking into an opinion about what is good and bad. Heuristic evaluation method is very informal methods and can be performed by the professionals and can evaluate user interface. The key of this method is that it requires several usability professionals to do their own individual evaluations of a user interface. Using the list of heuristics suggested by Nielsen, then get together to compare and combine their findings. Nielsen and Molick have developed the following 9 basic usability characteristics. 9 basic usability heuristics: simple and natural dialogue, use the language that the user can understand, keep the user's memory load to the minimum, be consistent, provide feedback, shortcuts, provide clarity, clearly marked exist, prevent errors, good error messages. This method can be adopted in the designing and development phase, identify potential problems associated with design and user interface, thus giving the designer and the developer the chance to reduce the effort is bug fixing after user test or the release of the application. Focus group. Focus groups are a useful method to investigate complex behavior, discover how different groups think and feel about a topic and why they hold certain opinion, identify changes in behavior, investigate the use, effectiveness and usefulness of particular library collection and services, verify or clarify the results for surveys, suggest potential solution to problem identified, inform decision making, strategic planning and resource allocation, to add a human dimension to impersonal data, to deepen understanding and explain statistical. Now we will discuss a focus group method. A focus group can be said to be a group interview or discussion. The participants are expected to be end users, and in addition there is at, at least one researcher who act as a mediator, as a moderator and introduces different topics. A focus group usually follow the same rules as open or semi-directive interviews. You need to plan in advance which topic you want to the group to discuss. You should also plan how the discussion are to be recorded, and if notes are to be taken, make sure there is a one person available for doing this. You should follow the informed consent procedure and send information and materials in advance to the participants. It is important to involve persons from a wide range of users in this discussion. A focus group should be expected to generate a lot of useful information and ideas. It is suited for use at the early stage of initiation of new service or function, but it can be used during the whole process. Workshop is a class or series of classes in which a small group of people learn methods and skill used in doing something, present a performance of a work using intensive group discussion and improvisation in order to explore aspects of services. End user workshop with many different activities. It can be done with the help of presentation, discussion, journal questionnaire, and breakout session. Libraries may periodically offer workshop on new library services, refresher workshop on existing library resources. Workshop may be open to the public or may be directed to particular user group to acquaint faculty with electronic resources available in their discipline and has offered training beginning graduate student during summer semester so that they can get a sneak preview of resources available. Longitudinal studies. A longitudinal study is a cross-sectional study. In this method, researchers conduct several observation surveys of the same subject over a period of time, sometimes last many years, and researchers should not interfere or alter the subject and the criteria except the time. A limitation of most user research method is that they capture only the specific moment of the time when the researcher is with a participant. However, in reality, the user experience usually takes place over a longer period of time. So, this method, longitudinal study, can be performed. A longitudinal study is a cross-sectional study. Libraries can regularly conduct user study and explain. Longitudinal data allow the analysis of duration of a particular enables survey researchers to get close to the kind of causal explanation usually attainable only with experiments. The design permits the measurement of differences or change in a variable from one period to another. Longitudinal studies facilitate the prediction of future outcomes based upon earlier factor. The same method can be applied in the library and information centers because every library has to observe all important aspects of services at every interval of time, such as user approach towards reading material to develop collection development policy of the library. How to conduct a user study? As we have already discussed that the user study involves following steps: identify problem, setting objectives, selecting suitable technique, collecting data, analyzing data, and reporting. Now we will discuss each and every step in detail. The first step is identify problem. It is helpful because the process of identification of problem extend the better understanding about what to be examined to assess internal and external environment of the library. The problem and the issues may be vary from library to library. It is helpful to conduct an internal and external assessment to understand what is happening inside and outside of your organization. The problem or issues may be related to the user study, on user behavior, user satisfaction, and research behavior, or on any point. The second step is the setting objectives. At this stage, it has to determine that the user's study will be done on a single problem or a multiple problem. The library has to set certain objectives to attain to complete this study. The specific goals have to define for the undertaken issues. And the third step is to select a suitable technique. The whole result of the study is depend on the suitable research technique. Thus, the library may opt any method of technique for data collection. This may be quantitative or qualitative method, or further maybe select any technique such as questionnaire method, observation, interview, and so on. The following points can be considered for selecting a proper research technique. Who will collect the data? What will be the area of comparison? What locations? How should data be collected? The data is collected, that will be a qualitative data or a quantitative data. What sources should be used to collect data? Pre-existing or official data, survey data, focus groups and interviews, observed data, and what should be the time frame for the study. And the fourth step is the collecting the data. After due consideration of the research technique, library has to collect data. Implement of the data collection plan requires attention. Require attention of the following points: data collection through own employee or through outsource, identify the population, sample, maximum participation of the population or sample, protecting privacy and personal information, minimize the inconvenience for the population or sample, choosing the best time to collect the data, and flexibility also. Considering a test period to allow you to improve, modify data collection method, distribution and collection of data as per users' convenience. Now we will discuss about how we can conduct a use study in a library. Means there is a procedure. In this discussion we will understand how this process is used. The method of users study depend on the policy of library or its administration. The library can conduct use users its own or can conduct through any outsource agency. How data of user study is gathered and analyzed depends on many factors such as the types of users, area of use study, service to be analyzed, initiation of new service, and so on. Every use study should be conducted in an ethical way. Participants should be informed in advance and should be allowed to maintain their privacy. It is better to gather information through accepted data collection techniques to maintain the authenticity of user study and to protect the credibility and reliability of use study. A use study may involve the following steps. The step 1, first you have to identify problem, second you have to set your objectives, and third is to select suitable method or technique. Then after, you can collect your required data and analyze your data, and then you have to report your what you have conducted or what you have collected through this use study methods. The second last step is analyzing data. This step involves analyzing and interpreting the data collected through technique employed in previous steps. Again, this analysis can be done at the library or can take the help of external consultant. The data collected should be analyzed in the way to fulfill the objectives of the study. And the last stage is the reporting stage. After analyzing and interpreting the result of the data collected, it may be reported in report form so that the outcomes of the results can be applied or implemented for improvement of the library or its services. It should consider including the following elements: a summary of the analysis and interpretation, identification of barriers, gaps and opportunities, steps to eradicate barriers, gaps and possibilities to achieve opportunities, setting short-term and longer-term goals, how progress will be monitored and evaluated. Apart from the above consideration, the report should contain important suggestions and conclusions. Though valuing users' opinion and suggestion comes under the purview of every library. This can be done by using a variety of methods and techniques of use studies. It is in practice that libraries are using the experience of users to identify their expectations. Apart from the traditional methods and techniques of use studies are also being utilized by the libraries and information centers, because the traditional methods are not able to satisfy or fulfill libraries' objectives of use studies. In that case, the methods are given in these modules can be supplemented or utilized to conduct use studies.